Alright, what is up? The web UI has integrated the 4-bit quantization, so that is good to go. And the GPTQ for LLAMA quantization is working. It has been working. There's a couple things you want to make sure that you specify the visible devices, but we'll get into that later. The models that it reformats, the outputs have been very shoddy, so there should be a patch or maybe some update needed, but you can quantize the models yourself. It does take up a little bit of memory and VRAM. Right now I'm using 69 gigabytes of actual RAM and about 8 gigabytes of VRAM, so it is pretty hefty. Fortunately, I got 95 gigabytes of memory. Yeah, and as you can see here, we're quantizing the 30B and we're going up 86 and 17 gigabytes of VRAM. So this is hefty, but I'm going to publish these links saying I never did nothing. So it's hefty. Most of you probably don't have 69 gigabytes of memory. You're not going to be able to quantize the models yourself. But that's okay, because on Hugging Face, the 13B and the 7B are released and available. The 30B is not, but if this finishes quantizing, I will put a link in the description to a Google Drive where I'll host it. It should be public, so if you have the link, you'll be able to download the weights yourself. For the people, always. Problem. And we check these charts here. None of these are the llama model, but the accuracy is not supposed to go down. But again, as I said before, the results have been pretty wacky and funky fresh. I'm not going to show the install because there really isn't an install. The process should be same as the last two videos that I have, so make sure you watch those. I will update the Google Doc that's in the last video, and I will repost that Google Doc link, as well as hopefully a link for the 30B weights. I did run out of memory and storage, actually, because I have a ton of models on here now, and I only have about a terabyte. Do that again, it takes about an hour, no problem. But here are the links that I will post, and the instructions are pretty self-explanatory. You might as well do what the instructions say. And you're going to clone the GPTQ by QuapQuap 200 into a folder called repositories. And I had a lot of trouble running this because when you run the setup.py, it compiles this CUDA code, which is basically C. Although it's not obvious in the code, it actually does run your GPUs. I think it's these blocks right here that do some kind of rescaling or something. And these atomic adds, you'll see an error for that as well, which the atomic add is defined for ints, I believe. If you don't have ability to do integer matrix multiplication, then you're not going to have ints in here. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to run the model by Ubabuga and make sure that you have 8-bit running, and whatever settings you use to get the 8-bit running. If you do have to specify visible devices, make sure that you specify those visible devices when you're running CUDA.py. You also need to have the GCC compiler. Make sure you have GCC installed. You should just be able to run sudo apt update sudo. You can upgrade. Some people were saying that they had to downgrade some packages, so if you did downgrade packages to get the 8-bit to run, you do not want to upgrade before you start the GPTQ installation. So just keep that in mind. Upgrading is going to upgrade to the newest version. Update is just going to keep the package the same, but update any changes that have been made to the version that you have currently, which sometimes there might be a new version, but updates are put to previous versions or whatnot. So just stick with update if you had to downgrade. Sudo apt install build dash essential, and there you go. I already had it. That should get you good to go for all this running of and compiling of C code. You do want to do that before you run the GPTQ files by QuapQuap 200. And once you run this python setup.cuda and py, after you, and make sure you have build essential installed and you have GCC installed, maybe just do dcc -- version, and it should show something here that looks similar to this. Once you have that going, and you do this step, you should see a response that says finished process dependencies for quant-cuda = 0, and then you know you're good to go. There's going to be a ton of errors and warnings potentially. Don't worry about that. Just look for this line at the end of running, and then you know you're good to go. After that, you can uninstall and reinstall transformers, and then you want to get the specialized 4-bit weights, which can be found on Hugging Face. Only the 7B and 13B are available right now, but it's possible and very likely that someone will upload a 30B and 65B implementation. I will rerun the 30B on mine. It was pushing the limits of my memory. I was getting up to 90 gigabytes of memory and 17 gigabytes potentially past. I think I saw 18, 19 gigabytes of VRAM. So it was pushing my system to the limit. I did have some editing and OBS running at the same time. So maybe if we shrink that down, in worst case, start running the Ubuntu or Ubuntu, we can get it done. And then I will post it in a Google Drive, and I'll make a public link. That's the best I can do. And you'll see that in the description. So once all that is done, you're then just going to want to go into the models folder, and this is in the previous video for setting up the web UI, and you just put the PT files, because that's what they provide for you. You just put the PT files in the same models folder, and you call the function the same way, and everything should run hunky-dory. So you specify the load and 4-bit tag, but you keep the model definition the same. When you specify load and 4-bit, it's going to be looking for the PT files, and you can then run the PT file that you have. In this case, the best one I have is 13B. We can go ahead and enter there, and everything will run smoothly. There you go. Control click, and we have the web UI. Alright, and these outputs I've noticed with the PT 4-bit weights are a little bit different. I can't describe how, but the text is not as fantastic as I was getting before, but they're still interesting. Poppin' means to be the best at what you do. It also means to have a good time, and that is exactly what I'm doing right now. What is your background in dance, theater, / performance? How do you get started with this stuff? Seems like an interview. That's cool. It's what's poppin', Lil Mama was the prompt, and popping is kind of related to the hip hop genre, and so it gave back a interview with a seemingly dance, theater, performance art related individual. So that's pretty good context. I would say this is a good response. I would have liked to see maybe some quotes or something to show that it is a back and forth between two different people, but pretty good, cool. And it looks like they are interviewing a woman, and I did say Lil Mama, so that's another good context. Pretty good generation. I do like the Llama generations, even though they don't score as high as the others. That should sum it up. All the links will be in the description, and if you have questions, this wasn't a full install, so I would expect, I'd probably have questions watching this. That's fine. Make sure you comment in the description, and I'll be back. I'm here to help for the people always. I will post these 30B weights if I can, and I hope to hear from you guys. Appreciate it. Peace.